I want us to have a conversation. I just want to enlighten a few people on how the African Union was formed, because a lot of Africans might not know this, but I really feel like it is important for us to know how our, like, the institution we think is the most important in the African continent, how it was formed, right? So the the first thing you have to know is the first institution that was formed, or that African Union replaced, was the OAU, which is the Organization of African Unity. So, and this, the founding members was people like Kwame Nkrumah, was Kwame Nkrumah, and the other African leaders, Abdulaziz of Algeria, and those were the founding members of the OAU. And the main objective of the OAU was to help decolonize. It was decolonization, to help African countries fight off their colonial masters. And they had one major problem. There was one major problem that they faced that led to helped as a catalyst to in the creation of the African Union, which was the non-interference. They had a non-interference policy, uh, and stuff like the genocide in Rwanda made it clear to them that that was clearly a flaw, and they had to change and integrate to a more institution, or to create a platform that will allow them to actually engage in a politically, and also help economic integration among the member states, because they noticed also, this was also another flaw noticed by the OAU, that small countries cannot face the challenges of globalization alone. So there was need for Africa to come to a single unit and promote economic integration, and everything that has to do with the continent. And General Muammar Gaddafi of Libya was one of the founding members. He pushed his activism. Of course, everything was not fully implemented. So the last meeting of the OAU was in 2002. After they felt like the objective of the OAU was fulfilled when South Africa gained its independence from the apartheid government of South Africa, and Mandela was finally released from prison. So they felt like, okay, we have achieved our objectives of creating this institution, the OAU. So there was need to move to a system that not just focus on decolonization, because to them at the moment decolonization was done, and then they needed an institution that is more inclusive, and that led to the creation, or the declaration of the third declaration in Libya in 2002, that in turn led to the adoption of the Act of the African Union in 2002, and also the September 9, 2002, also the last OAU meeting was held in Durban, South Africa. So with all this, we what we have, the take-home message I want everybody to know was that first, the African Union was created as a system relative to that of the EU, like a copy of the European Union, except for the fact that the African Union did not act as the OAU, because the OAU was actually an independent institution, because it was funded by Africans. It was funded by the member state, and majorly by the Libyan government. It was funded by the African states. The AU, in turn, came as a European institution, because it was, first of all, based on the European system of governance and everything. And their objective was not just like that of the OAU, to stay clear from political issues of other countries. They had an objective to actually engage and actually interfere in a course of war or anything, like in internal affairs of other African countries. That is like the objective, and promoting, of course, political and economic integration, like rapidly. So they move forward to create this institution, the African Union. And then with the creation of African Union, there was a twist, because it was not the budget of the AU, were the African countries at the moment till date were not able to fund this institution. So it became a tool for the European Union to influence and be able to get resources. Unlike the OAU, the African Union became easy to manipulate, because they could not fund this institution. Africans could not fund the budget of this institution. So they ended up dependent on European nations like Germany, France, and of course the World Development Bank and stuff like that. So we were not the funders of that. That is another thing. So as we move forward, the flaws of the OAU that led to the formation of the African Union, the genocide in Rwanda, Africans were not able to interfere because they had a non-interference policy. And other things, the globalization, the challenges, the OAU had no agenda for that, so it was clearly an outdated system that needed a new replacement. So it was replaced with the African Union. And so when we say African Union, you have to understand the structures were completely different. The African Union structure was more complex. It was more complex, similar to the European Union. Pan-Africanism, Parliament, Peace and Security Council, Court of Justice were all in the agenda of the African Union, whereas it wasn't in that of the OAU. The OAU was just focused on diplomacy, like everything had to be diplomatical and non-interference policy, right? So the main focus, political sovereignty of the OAU, political, economic, and social integration, promoting democracy and human rights was the complex system of the African Union, even though we don't see that being met because the system is constantly being manipulated. It is constantly being, it is, of course, it's a mess. African Union is a mess, and all of us can see that. So the reason for this video is just to let us know that the one of the most institution that was created by Africans was the OAU, founded by Kwame Nkrumah and Abdulaziz of Algeria. So in 1963. So the last meeting of the OAU was in South Africa, Durban, in 2002, September 9, 2002. And then the first meeting, or the formal creation and the adoption of the African Union Act, of the Act of the African Union, sorry, was in 2002, after the independence of South Africa from the apartheid government. So I will be doing a video on, I will do a video on ECOWAS, which is a West African bloc, and SADC, which is a South African defense bloc, and how they are funded. All these organizations are not funded by Africa. They are being funded by the European Union in an attempt, or in a way, to like control what Africans say. So there is still a need for an independent organization in the African continent. And I believe that with our generation, we have to keep an open mind on creating, or at least reforming, the African Union, because it doesn't meet our shared objective to have a free and fair African system built for Africans and to serve Africans. So I hope I'll be hoping to see you on my next video. If you like content like this, don't fail to subscribe. Peace.